We are back, your favorite or least favorite Karen Reed reporter reporting for duty. There are some interesting updates and confusion around this case that I think we should talk about. So yesterday, July 22nd, 2024, there was a hearing and a new trial date was scheduled for January 27, 2025 for the case. And at that hearing, the judge basically rescheduled or scheduled the trial with all of the initial charges. And people were understandably confused about that because there had been a motion filed by Karen Reed's defense attorneys asking the court to dismiss some of the charges, including second-degree murder, because it was made aware to the defense that there was a consensus of jurors that believed Karen Reed was not guilty on specific charges. And they didn't know, allegedly, that there could be like a partial verdict or a bifurcated verdict. Really interesting, right? And something that lawyers have been going back and forth about, because Judge Cannone is such an experienced judge, there was kind of initial confusion and disbelief that maybe she wasn't specific about whether the jurors could come to a partial verdict. I am not a jury expert by any means, but there's a lot of research and practice around how can you be as unbiased as possible to a jury, right? A jury is a group of theoretically peers of the defendant from similar communities, a wide, diverse group of people who live in the same area. And the idea is that the judge is not supposed to sway the jury in any way. And so there is debate, I guess you could say, about whether the judge in this case was clear enough with the jurors that they could have come to a partial verdict. So we will see in August, kind of when this motion is actually heard, what happens with all of these charges. What we saw throughout the case, right, is that the investigation had some serious challenges from its inception. And that is going to pose a similar challenge in a second trial, right? The facts are not going to change. The investigation is not going to change. I mean, maybe the prosecutors will change their strategy, or allegedly maybe like who they call as witnesses or how many witnesses or the order of witnesses or how they perform or deliver their opening and closing statements, right? Like those are things that can be tweaked. The facts don't change. And so we know about a lot of the facts in this case and the investigation, and much of it is troubling. The other thing that many people, both experts and non-experts, think about this case in particular is one, that it's been obviously getting a different level of attention because the victim was a cop. So that's one. Two, because the defendant is a woman and has utilized kind of the internet and people on the internet to really advocate for her freedom. So that's another part. But many people kind of who have feelings kind of across the board on this case believe that the defendant, in this case, Karen Reed, was overcharged. Second-degree murder is one of the charges. That's a very high threshold. There's a high burden to prove with second-degree murder, including intent. And this question of, would it be in the Commonwealth's better interest kind of to kind of lessen the charges to maybe increase the likelihood of a guilty finding? But the personalities in this case have now kind of become bigger than the case itself. And we have also learned this week that this case is going to be a 3-part Netflix documentary series. You know, I'll be watching it. And I imagine and know that a lot of people are going to have strong feelings both ways on that, right? Legal documentary dramas, I think, elicit feelings, right? someone died in this case, a whole family and a community has been harmed, right? People's lives are still in danger, including kind of a lot of the witnesses, allegedly the jurors and Karen Reed, right? Like all of them have moved or haven't disclosed their identity for fear of being harmed. But this idea of like, should someone profit off of someone else's pain? And what does that say about us as a society that we're so interested in this case? Like it's this drama that we're all following. And I think I don't think there's an answer. I think like legal documentaries are not new. There was a documentary on Netflix around Sean Ellis and his wrongful conviction for wrongfully being convicted of killing a Boston police officer. So again, kind of interesting, right? That Netflix is following up with that with another Boston police officer who's been killed, or died. We don't know exactly which. You know, legal documentaries also open conversations about topics that maybe need to be brought to light. I think people are interested in the legal system, which is important because we have a legal system in this country that should be open to everyone, and we should all understand kind of what cases are, what makes a strong case, how different cases are handled, who gets access to what. Those are things that should be open to the public, and the public should be able to opine on. So whether or not we agree with Karen Reed doing this documentary series, or I mean, Netflix doing it, who knows? I'm sure she's making a lot of money, but we don't know that, right? We don't know that for sure. I think overall they are very good for the public and public policy, I guess I would say. But so much to kind of continue following on this case, right? There's the August motion date. We will see if ultimately some of the charges against her are dismissed. There's the January trial date. We'll see if that changes, if some of the charges against her are dismissed. I think learning more about this Netflix series and whether the new trial will be included in it, I imagine it will, and whether there will be any talk, if some of the charges are dismissed in August, about whether she pleads, meaning whether she pleads guilty to some of the lesser charges, which we know that she was driving while intoxicated. I mean, if we are to believe blood work at a hospital, right? We know that her blood work the morning after the alleged incident was still showing signs that she was intoxicated per Massachusetts levels, right? So if she was intoxicated at 9 a.m., what was she at 12? The night before. So stay tuned, a lot more on this case, and let me know in the comments what you want to hear. I'm Margo Lindauer, and that's the law.